All right, everyone. Welcome to our second workshop. Thank you all for coming. I know there's a Google event upstairs. But yeah, so we'll get right into it. So today's topic is actually going to be machine learning. So before we start, I want to give you a very high-level overview of machine learning. But also before that, I want to give you a disclaimer. I'm not like a machine learning specialist. My track is not machine learning. It's software engineering. So my understanding of it is very high level. So if you see any inaccuracies, feel free to call it out and tell me what's wrong with what I'm saying. But here's a quick introduction to machine learning. So the idea of machine learning is you allow computers to learn things. So right now, companies using it are companies like Tesla, Google, Apple. Tesla uses it for their cars. Google uses it for all kinds of things, everything from understanding what you search to their own self-driving cars. Apple uses it in Siri, as well as other aspects of your phone, like understanding and giving you suggestions about things. It can be applied to many things, just like I've been talking about. It can be applied to self-driving cars. It can be applied to understanding your search things. There's a huge applicability of machine learning. So, and obviously the last thing is it makes a lot of money. Right now, machine learning is one of the biggest things in computer science. Everyone's trying to use it in different ways. Everyone's trying to have the best machine learning product. So obviously, we have this. So I'm going to get right into it and talk about how it works. So I split up machine learning, at least from my understanding, into two separate parts. The first part being training. So imagine you have a bunch of pictures of hot dogs. So you know for sure those are hot dogs, right? So in real life, you know these are hot dogs because throughout your life, you've seen hot dogs, people have told you they're hot dogs, and you've learned that this is a hot dog. So what we can do with machine learning is we can train what's called a model. And what we can say is, hey, we have these images, and I know they're hot dogs, and I keep feeding them in. We'll train it so the model can detect to say, whenever there's an image of hot dogs, I'll tell you that's a hot dog. Because by default, if you just give a computer an image of a hot dog, it doesn't know what it is, right? From the basic understanding of data is all just zeros and ones, right? So by using this machine learning model, we can understand that it's a hot dog. So then comes classification. So here's a new picture of a hot dog. This was not used to train our model, but if we put it through our hot dog model that we just created, theoretically, it'll spit out hot dog. And conversely, we also have, if we put in something that's not a hot dog, not hot dog. Does anybody get the reference? There you go. All right. So what does that have to do with iOS? So starting with iOS 11, macOS High Sierra, watchOS 4, and all the new operating systems that Apple has introduced this year, we now have a framework called Core ML. What Core ML allows you to do is perform machine learning on Apple devices. So you can actually perform machine learning things on your phone, the TV, macOS. So right now, what it allows you to do is use already trained models. So its downside is you can't actually train the models on your device. You have to train them in other ways. But today's workshop will just be applying models. We're not, like I said, it's a very high level overview of machine learning. But yeah, so that's the pros and that's the cons. So being able to do machine learning on your device is a very powerful thing. But obviously, since you can't train the models, there's kind of that downside. Alongside that is another framework called Vision, which is also new. Vision allows for the use of image analysis and computer vision. So what that means is, given an image, say you take an image, it allows you to detect objects within it, and we can combine this with Core ML because once it's detected objects, it can actually classify them, right? So once it sees there's a hot dog there, we still need to let it figure out, hey, that is a hot dog, and so print out hot dog. So there's that. And so you can identify things like faces, detect features, etc. And obviously, you guys know the new iPhone X has the huge thing about Face ID. So obviously, identifying faces is a very big part of this because now you can like make applications that can detect faces, and maybe you can create different things off of that. All right, and then just as part of our workshop, we'll be using something called a UI image picker controller. This is a view controller that allows you to either use the camera to capture an image, like on the left side, or you can actually select an image from your gallery, like on the right side. It's a very easy to use. It only takes a few lines of code. And the best part is you don't have to design this UI. The UI is already there for you. The next thing is a concept called delegation. So when we use a UI, something like a UI image picker controller, whenever something occurs within it, it calls different functions. But we need to have a way to tell it where it can get the information for calling these functions from. That's what delegation is. It's I won't go over it too much. This is a concept that will take a little while to fully understand. But just it's somewhat of the idea is when you interact with this UI image picker controller, it calls a function that we implement using the UI image picker delegate. I've been trying to think of a better way to visualize it, but I think the best way would be once we actually get into the workshop and we start coding it, it'll make a lot more sense. But yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for the presentation. This project that the workshop we're actually going to make is probably less than 50 lines of code. It's a very easy, a very not code-intensive workshop, but it's a concept-heavy workshop because obviously we're now introducing machine learning, object detection, stuff like that. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. Everyone make sure you're on this Google Doc. In the Google Doc, there are 2 links. The first link is the live stream. The second link is a link to download a machine learning model. This is the model we'll be using in today's workshop. This model allows for the detection of emotions given an image of a face, and we'll be using that to actually detect emotions given a picture. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. So let me get this out of the way. There. All right, so open up Xcode like normal. And then we're going to go to create a new Xcode project, and we'll be using single view app again. And I'm just going to name this. Anybody have any questions so far, by the way, about anything we went over in the presentation? Go ahead. Yeah. So, do you have a Windows device or? Yeah. Okay, so I would recommend looking into virtual machines if you were still interested into doing this, but it would take a little. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go over it with you after the workshop if you want, if you're more interested in it. All right, so go ahead and start Xcode, and we'll be presented with this. Go ahead and name your project whatever you want. I'll just call this ML Live. And make sure, once again, you're using Swift as the language. All right. So also, just to give you guys an idea of the app that we're building. All right, so this is the completed app on my iPad right here, if it loads. All right, there we go. So it's not a very UI heavy app, but let me go ahead and click take a photo. Now I'm gonna look at it. And then we'll go ahead and use my photo. Let's see what it says. It says I'm neutral expression. It's close, but obviously not perfect. But the idea is we're using the machine learning model to actually show what emotion the person's using. So to start off, let's start designing the UI, which literally consists of 2 things, as you noticed. So go to the storyboard. And if you're new, the storyboard will be on the left side right here. And then on the bottom right, make sure the object library is open. We're just going to want a label. So this label is going to hold the actual emotion. I'm just going to drag it up here, and for now, we'll just type in emotion as a placeholder. And then the next thing we want is a button to actually go to the camera. So search for a button, put in a button. Take a photo. There we go. All right. And once you have that done, go ahead and pick the click on the assistant editor, the little button with the Venn diagram like logo. Increase. All right, there we go. Make it a bit easier to see. Can everyone read the code okay? Yeah. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to connect these UI elements to the code. So we're going to use outlets for that. If you guys remember from the last workshop, Control-click and drag into your code up here. And let's call this emotion label. And then we'll also connect the button, but instead of an outlet, we're going to use an action. So we're going to call this, make sure you select action in the drop-down right there, and do on photo. All right. So you should now have them connected, and if you run over the little gray dots on the left side of the code, you'll notice that they're highlighted. Let's go ahead and run this. All right. You'll notice, of course, it's just going to look like, your app should just look like this. And it's not centered because I'm using an iPad, but creating the UI on an iPhone size. But yeah, your app should look like this so far if you try running it. Oh, by the way, guys, if you have any troubles, feel free to raise your hand. Yusuf and Ryuji over here will come and help you. All right, so the next step to the application is, normally we haven't imported any kind of frameworks. So I'm actually going to show you what you had to do to import a framework like Core ML and Vision. So at the top, you might notice that UIKit is already imported. UIKit is the framework that actually provides things like view controllers and such. What you're just going to do is make a new line under it and type in import Core ML. That imports the Core ML framework. And then the next line, import Vision. That imports the Vision framework. So go ahead and type that in. All right, so as you guys might notice, the app uses the user's camera. So because now that we're using the user's hardware and we're using a camera, this causes a privacy issue. So what you have to do is inside the information property list on the left side, so open that up, we need to define that we're using the camera and the reason why we're using it. So the user is prompted with it, and you can ensure that they agree that you're using your camera, because some users might not want you to use their camera at all. So I know it's kind of hard to read and there's no real way to zoom in, but at the top, highlight the information property list, and you'll notice that if you go right here, there's a little plus sign. Click it. If it works. And you'll notice that it creates a new element inside this dictionary. So scroll down. And you'll notice that there's a bunch of keys that say privacy. The one that we want to use is privacy camera usage description. So go ahead and double click that, press enter, and it'll create the element for you. And right here under value, double click it and give it a reason for why you're using the camera. So whenever you use a camera in any kind of application, you have to do this. Otherwise, it'll crash. Not only will it crash your app, but you just won't have access to the camera. The only way to get access to the camera is for the user to agree to it. So in here, we're going to type in to take picture of user's face. There you go. So now we've done it, and now it'll give us a little prompt whenever we access the camera saying, do you agree to this application using our camera? You don't have to implement the UI for that. It's already done for you. All right, so now let's go back to our assistant editor. Let's just do it side by side. So, all right, so the first thing that we want to do right now is we want to instantiate that UI image picker controller. So previously, what we've done is we've created the UI for the screen, and then we displayed it. Now I'm going to show you how you would instantiate something programmatically. So inside the action on photo, we're going to create a UI image picker. So go ahead and type in let image picker, or whatever you want to name it, equals UI image picker controller. We're not gonna give it anything special, just instantiate it like that. And the next thing that you want to do is you just want to type in self.present, and you'll notice this really long function pop up. Just click enter so we can use it easily. And the view controller to present is going to be this image picker we just created. Press tab to go to the next parameter, and this can be true or false. It doesn't really matter, but having it animated makes it look more fluid. So what I usually do is just keep it at true. Press tab again, and I would suggest just typing in nil here, just to make it not confusing. That third parameter is something called completion handler. We'll get into it in a little bit, but just put nil for that third parameter. But if I run the application now, and I click take a photo, you'll notice that it pops up my photo library. And it should do that for you as well. Is anybody having any issues so far? All right, so now that we've been able to present the actual image picker controller, we want to change a few things. So the first thing that we wanted to do, instead of using the gallery, which is the default, we wanted to use the camera. So that's actually pretty simple. All you have to do is image picker dot camera device. We're gonna say equals dot front. Well, let's say dot front, yeah. So this says we want to use the front camera, and then also oh yeah, right. And then another thing that we want to do is image picker dot source type equals dot camera. Actually, switch these around. So we first want to say use the camera, and then the next thing we want to say is use the front camera. All right, so this allows you to select the camera as the input source rather than just the gallery. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. And I'm going to click take a photo. You'll notice it pops up that little prompt that I was talking about, and we didn't have to do any code for that prompt. It's asking, do you want to allow this application? And you'll notice to take a picture of the user's face, the reason we put in as the definition. So I'm going to click OK, and that'll give us access to camera. And you'll notice this is a really nice UI. You didn't have to create it. It's there for you to use, and this will allow you to easily capture images. So I'm going to click cancel for now. But there we go. Okay, so far we've gotten the camera to appear, and we've presented the actual UI image picker controller. So the next thing is, once we actually take an image, so let me actually take an image with this. You'll notice that right now it lets us take an image. If I click use photo, it just dismisses itself, right? Nothing's happening to that image. It's not being saved. It's not being used. We're not performing machine learning on it, anything. So the idea behind that is now we need to use what's called a delegate. So at the top of your class, you'll notice that this uses the UI view controller. Right after it, put comma UI image picker controller delegate. This says that this class conforms to what's called a UI image picker controller delegate. So what this says is there's a series of functions that it implements, and what we can do is we can say the image picker's delegate is equal to this class. So what you need to do is, before we present the image picker, type in image picker dot delegate equals self. So what it's saying is the image picker, whenever it performs an action like takes a photo, it calls functions that can be implemented inside this class. We could have also said the delegate is equal to some other class. Also, you'll notice that it'll give us an error. If you click fix, what it does is it adds it'll add another delegate to it called a UI navigation controller delegate. Wait, actually don't do that. Add it up here. UI navigation controller delegate. This is just a delegate that defines it as being able to transition between the two screens. Don't worry too much about it. But the more important part is UI image picker controller delegate. So to give you a better idea of what this says we can implement is, hold command, click on the UI image picker controller delegate, and click jump to definitions. You'll notice there's a bunch of code here and a bunch of comments, but what's really important is this section right here. You'll notice that there's two optional functions, one called image picker controller did finish picking media with info, and the other one is image picker controller did cancel. The first one is a function that's run whenever we choose a photo, right? When we take that photo and I click use photo, that first function is run. If for any reason we cancel out of it, the second function is run. So what you should do right now is, we're going to use the first function because we're going to assume the user doesn't cancel, and even if they do, it doesn't matter what happens. Go ahead and copy that first function. So copy it up to the func part, click back, which will take you back to your code, and right below our on photo action, go ahead and paste this and just put brackets so it becomes an actual function. All right, has anybody having any big issues so far? Can't access the camera? Did you add it into the property list? Yeah, add this. Remember the privacy thing? All right.
Yeah, I did.
You did? What is it? Oh, did you also did you put dot camera first then dot front?
Yeah.
Okay. What does it say in the console? Are you using the simulator?
Yeah.
Okay. So for everyone not using a physical device, I probably should have explained it because the simulator doesn't allow you to use the camera. In the source type, instead of dot camera, put dot photo library and just comment out this line that says camera device. The reason being is, since the simulator doesn't allow for actual camera emulation, it'll just crash. So yeah, if you're using the simulator, make sure you're doing this. But if you're using an actual device connected to your laptop, use the dot camera. So I'm going to use dot camera so we can see that. Otherwise, image picker dot source type equals dot, what is it? Dot photo library. And then obviously you only put the camera there. And let me copy this into our Google Doc. And then this. There we go. All right, any other big questions? This one right here? Okay, I'll recap that again. So remember how we have the image picker controller, right? It appears, but we can take a picture, we can select it, but whenever something occurs in it, right? Like you click cancel, a function gets fired. That function is like hidden away, right? But by saying, see how I put delegate equals self? What we're saying is the functions for that are found in this class. And then we're just implementing the function down here. And by doing that, you also had to put this. You'll notice I said it's type of UI image picker controller delegate. It says it's conforming to that. So it's like it implements it. It's kind of a tricky topic. It's pretty important, but it just takes some practice to get used to. But the idea is, you have these delegates. You say the delegate is found. Like even the UI view controller has a delegate, right? And that's already set to this class. It says the functions for this this object, this thing, this view controller, are found in this class. Does that kind of make a bit more sense? Okay. So do you get the idea of actions? Like when the button is clicked, an action occurs, right? So remembering the UI, so let me show you the UI image picker controller, right? So right here is, I'll take a picture, right? At the bottom right, this is just a button, right? So what happens when a button occurs, right? We need an action. So implementing that function is just the action. It's kind of like a roundabout way of implementing the action, but it's almost like you've defined the actions previously, and by setting the delegate, it automatically says the actions are there. Just look for this function instead of us physically dragging from the UI to the code. Does that make a bit more sense? I've been struggling with a way of explaining this myself, but yeah, so that's the idea. But here, I'll show you. So now that I've implemented that function at the bottom, right? So let me just put a print statement that says hi. So I'm going to run it. I'm going to take a photo. So notice like whenever, okay, I already clicked use photo, and it's stuck there because I haven't done anything after that, but you notice the word hi printed out. So it's saying whenever that button is clicked, so we got into that point in the UI image picker controller, this function is being run with the print statement of hi. Oh, here, I'll show you. So remember how I put UI image picker controller delegate up here? Make sure it'll like autocomplete. Just use the autocomplete. No point in typing out the whole thing. And then once you have that typed up there, if you hold command, click on it, and click jump to definition. Uh-oh. See if that. All right, but yours should look a bit. Okay. Yours should be colorful. I think something's wrong with this. When you jump to definition, is it colorful and all? Right? And there's two functions, right? One that looks like this. Oh, here. So hold command, click on UI image picker controller delegate, click jump to definition. Is it working? Are you holding command when you click on it? What do you mean, this? What are you typing it right here? Did you put a comma and then hold command B or press command B once and build your project? Are there any errors? Hmm? Mm-hmm. Is it working now? Yeah. Jump to definition, right? And it's all colorful and all. Well, okay. So once you're there, you'll see two functions, right? It says optional function. What do you mean? What? It's not reaching to that page? That's weird. What version of Xcode are you running? 8, right? The beta one? Oh, okay. You can now download it from the App Store. They updated to 8 now in the App Store. Make sure you update, but I don't know if that's the issue, but it should still come up. Does your code look like this? Does it compile? Press Command B. Do you get any errors? What errors do you have? Okay, is the first error of this line? Okay, so make sure you type in UI navigation controller delegate as well. Still not working? Okay, let me see. Let's see, and then I'll run. So the idea is and now if you jump to definition, you'll see those functions. What's up? I don't know. It's fine if the song is running, but the idea is like inside here, it should probably some of them are cool, right? And this is all the cover. So you don't have it. Oh, okay. So just go to the Google Doc. Yeah, I typed it in the Google Doc. Oh, I think I know why. It's the oh, okay. And now it's put in the center. Oh, yeah, hi. Okay, so quick reminder, if you don't have an iPhone that you're running it on, make sure instead of source type equals dot camera, you're doing dot photo library. It should autocomplete, but make sure you're using that. It'll kind of run weird because the default images are like scenery images, but use dot photo library if you're not running it on the actual device. But yeah. All right, so has everyone gotten to the step where we have this function implemented-ish? Okay. So let's go ahead and continue. Make sure. All right, 1 second. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we're going to go and so whenever this function is called, it returns a dictionary with all the image information that we just went through. So when, all right, I'm going to steal my code. Alright guys, seems like I forgot to put into my repository correctly, but here's the idea. Okay, so on the right side is actually completed code, but I'll be explaining it on the left side just because I don't have my reference up here ready because I can't memorize all this. But the idea is, okay, so now that this function is called, whenever it's called, it returns a dictionary that contains all this information about the image. This dictionary is optional because the image might not actually be there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do optional unwrapping. So we're going to use the guard let statement. So type guard let image equals info. And there's already a predefined string that we can use to get out the image. And that'll be UI image picker controller edited image. We're going to use the edited image. I'm going to show you how to enable the edited image in a second as well. And then what we're going to do is type in as UI image, else we're going to print there was an issue. We probably won't run into this, but this makes our code very safe. So what we've just done is we've actually gotten out the image. I'll also just put a return statement right after that, after the print statement. So what we've done is we've gotten the image out of the dictionary that I was talking about. And what this allows us to do is now use this image for our actual machine learning request. So now we're actually going to dive right into using the machine learning. So has everyone been able to download the model successfully? Yes, no, maybe so. So if you've downloaded the model, all you have to do is drag it into your code right here. You'll notice I'm just dragging it. So if it's in your download folders, drag it from there. Drag it into your actual project. And you'll notice it'll just import as a .ml model. So let me expand that. And you'll notice it'll give us a little bit of information about this. It's called CNN emotions. It's a type of neural network classifier. It says the size. It says the author who created it. And it gives you a little description. Emotion recognition in the wild via convolutional neural networks and map binary patterns. It's a lot of big words. I don't know what half of them mean, but yeah. But the more important part is you'll notice at the bottom is model evaluation parameters. So this will actually define what you can give this model as an input and what you'll get out of it as an output. So you'll notice it says the data that you give as an input is an image that's color and 224 by 224 pixels. And it says it has to be an image with a face. And as outputs, you'll notice it says it gives a dictionary with probabilities of what emotion it is and a class label. So it'll give you the most likely emotion that it could be. So we'll just be using the class label and not worry about what other possible ones. So we'll just be picking the first emotion to display. All right. So now that we have the actual machine learning model put into it, let me see if this worked. Seems like it didn't. Bear with me, guys. This is my second time using the machine learning framework. All right. So go back to your view controller. And inside our view did load, we're going to create what's called a VN request. So VN request is it uses the vision framework to say, hey, whenever an image is given to this request, perform the machine learning given that model, and then output to us what it's observed from that image, right? So right under the emotion label outlet that we created, let's create a variable that actually contains our model. This is really simple. All you got to do is type in let's say, for example, we want to call this emotion model. All we got to do is type in, after we build it, never mind, CNN emotions. I like that. Also, underneath the actual model, make sure under target membership, this checkbox is checked. Otherwise, it won't actually show up in your code. But you notice now it should show up in my code. There you go. CNN emotions. Come on. There we go. So we've created a variable. This is really easy. Literally, all you had to do is just write a line. The Xcode and everything else takes care of it and creates like a class for you to actually instantiate the model. And so all we've done is we've said this emotion model variable is a type of this model. And so yeah, so we've just created our first variable that contains a machine learning model. The next thing that we had to do is actually create a variable that contains the way we're going to request to have the image classified. So we're going to create a variable called var request, and we're going to make it a type of vn request. And we're going to make this a global variable, and we're going to make it optional because we need to first instantiate it inside our viewDidLoad function. But yeah, so what we've done is we've created this request that we can call throughout any part of our code. So in the viewDidLoad function, we're going to actually do the part. You'll notice that right here in the completed code, it's we do like an optional checking to make sure that it actually works. So pretty much just type it word for word. So if let vision model equals try. So using this actually causes exceptions if there's any issues. So we're going to do try catch stuff, but we're just doing the try part. We're creating a VN core ML model for the model we created, which is the emotion model. All right. And then since that was created successfully, we can now say request is a VN core ML model. Well, core ML request using the model that we just created. So this is kind of a lot of code at once, but the idea here is we've gone through the model that we instantiated. The first optional check is just checking to make sure this is a valid model, we can use it. It puts it into a vision model object type. And then from there, we're now making the request that can be called later. So inside here, the first thing that we're going to want to type is request, comma, error. Come on. And then in. And also after emotion model, put dot model because it actually returns the model. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the idea is we've instantiated the actual model, and then we're taking this model and using the vision framework to actually detect what's going to be in our images. But every time we call the request, we need to define what happens when the request is called. This is what we're doing right here. So right after we've defined the request, and now inside the brackets that this request has defined, so right here, these two brackets, this code will occur whenever we run a request on some sort of image. So inside here, what will happen is all we want to do is say we need to do an optional check if let observations equals request.results. So request.results returns the actual array containing all the observations, so which emotions it's seen. Because in machine learning, whenever we classify an image, right, based on our model, it'll return all the emotions it detects along with, like it said, like in the description, it said the percentage. So it'll say, hey, it's 50% sure you're happy, 25% sure you're sad, 25% sure you're angry. So this is what will be returned in results. And what we're going to do is we're going to define it as a VN classification observation array. So these are just classes that let us store these observations and classifications easily. Don't worry too much about the syntax. This is just something that's pretty wordy, but the idea is you now have an array containing all the observations for the given image using that machine learning model. So let's just try printing out the observations. So inside there, just type in print observations. And I'll also copy the code into the Google Doc because I know this is quite a lot. So make sure you're putting that in your view did load function. So this actually instantiates the request right when the view is loaded, so when the app is actually created. All right, so now that we've actually created this request, after we've created this request, we want to call the request with the image that we just took. So down here, we actually got the image out of the image picker controller after it's been selected. And what we want to do is, you'll notice we just want to actually perform the request. So what we can do is call a handler. So we create a handler that makes it. So let handler equals vn image request handler. And what we can do is we're going to pass it the image. So it's going to be image.cg image and put an exclamation mark because we know the image exists. CG image is a different data representation of images. There's also different types such as CI image. You can also cast it into a type that's just data, but it's just a representation that's easier for the Vision framework to use. And then for options, we're just going to have an empty dictionary, which is instantiated like that. All right. And now that we've created this handler saying, hey, we're going to create a request using this image with these options, we're going to say handler.perform. And then we're going to use the request in an array. So it asks you to give it an array of requests, but since we only have one thing, we're just going to create a single array with just one object, which is the request we created all the way up here. And before it, put try an exclamation mark. So because this function actually throws exceptions, but what we can do is we can assume that it'll always work, because if we've gone into this step, the machine learning model is instantiated, the image is correct and it exists, and so we can assume that everything will work at this point. So we have try exclamation mark handler.perform. All right, and I'll put this in here. All right, so let's actually run our application. And if all goes well, we should be able to get an image, and it should just print out a bunch of observations that we have. You'll notice that it also will take a slightly longer time to build your app because the model itself is very big. The model is a couple hundred megabytes. Because of this, your application size increases a lot. So using machine learning models in your application is awesome, but the issue now is people have to download these huge apps, right? A lot of games are not even this big, so now you're creating a huge app. So yeah. So you can have much more accurate models the bigger it is. You can also have less accurate models if they're really small, but obviously that matters on what you're trying to accomplish with your app. But the app's loaded. Let me try taking a photo. Use photo. Actually, it should. Oh, there was an issue. All right. One thing that I forgot to say was in the image picker controller, if you're not using edited image, well, we're using an edited image, so you got to do image picker dot allows editing equals true. So make sure you have this inside your code, and this goes right here. All right. Make sure you have allows editing equals true. Because when we actually get out the image, we get out the edited image, and there isn't one if we don't edit it. Okay, so I'm going to take a photo. All right, see, with the edited image, we're able to do this. And now I'll just click use photo. So I've clicked it, and you'll notice that it's printed out this huge thing of different things. So you notice 86% disgust. What is this? 6.9% fear, 3.7% neutral, 2.2% surprise, 3.2% angry, and so on. You'll notice there's different percentages. I guess the image that I use does kind of look like I'm disgusted with something, but you'll notice it gives you a percentage of how accurate it is based on its model. Of course, you could train a model that's over way more. So models require a lot of data for it to be more accurate, right? So we could have a model that's like many gigabytes in size that would probably be much more accurate, but obviously with that comes a many gigabyte in size application. So the last thing that we have to do is simply take this, the first, like I was saying, the first emotion, let's just put this in the label. So you'll notice that after I clicked use photo, I'm just stuck here. So the first thing we should do is say picker.dismiss. Animated true and completion is nil. So you'll notice this function gives me two things. It gives me a picker, and it gives me an array called info. The array called info holds the image and stuff. Well, dictionary called info holds the things like the image, the edited image, and so on. The picker is the actual UI picker controller, right? So that if I do picker.dismiss, it dismisses itself. So now, if I run it, and I go ahead and take a photo, and I use it, you'll notice it dismisses after it finds everything, right? So now it's dismissed, and all we had to do is update the emotion right here. So let's go back to, we need to go back up here to where the actual request happens. And instead of printing the observations, we're going to do self.emotionLabel.text equals observations. And we're going to get the 0th index one dot identifier. Because what we're doing is we're getting the first emotion in that array, and we're just taking out the identifier. All right. And if I go back here, I'm going to take a photo. All right, hopefully that works. And you'll notice it says neutral. We've now updated it with the expression that we have. But yeah, that is the workshop. And that pretty much concludes it. So let me go ahead and copy this new updated code into Google Docs. And let me